This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by costume designer Tiffany Hasbourne, whose recent work includes Sweetwater, Hustle, and Atlanta, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Tiffany.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good, thanks. I guess my first question for you is, how did you get into this craft? Because I feel like for costume designing, I see people coming from different areas of the other industries and different ways of breaking into this industry. So how did you get into this craft?
So I was originally a celebrity wardrobe stylist first. And I did mostly music videos and athletes. And so my first design television job was on the TV show Ballers. Stephen Levinson hired me to be the assistant costume designer season 1 with Marion Toy. Midway through the season, there were some other costume designers brought on. And then season 2, Robert Mata, who was Dwayne's personal, and I took over the show.
Oh, wow. Then did you have, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, I've heard is the nicest person.
The nicest.
All right.
Well,
and
not a rumor. It's true.
How the heck, he's got such a big frame. So like, how do you design for him? Like, what do you have to take into context for that?
So Robert Mata, who is Dwayne's personal, he does all his movies with him. They did the pilot. I actually didn't work on the pilot. When they did the pilot, they realized that Spencer Strassmore, the character who Dwayne plays, was supposed to be this, ex-ball player who has this like extreme loud style. So there was the plaid suits, and 95% of his clothes were custom made. All of the suits were custom made. If he wore a t-shirt and jeans, stuff like that, that was purchased. But 95% of his clothes were custom made by Joanna Alba, Alba Designs, who she actually does, she does. I actually use her now on pretty much all of my projects. She does athletes, she does A-list celebrities, but she is a woman who understands the fine tuning of a great men's tailored suit.
I think what attracted me to color correction was the fact that we were like the next stage of cinematography. And the creative side was huge, trying to understand what was wrong with an image, how to balance it, trying to understand how to let the tools do what you want them to do. Where else can the technology go? What else can we do? I'm very interested in trying to mold the image and create the best look possible. And whatever tools are out there, you want to try and latch onto them. I'm Eric Whipp, and this is my course on color correction.
So with television or features, because you've worked on both, it always starts with the script. So, like the 3 projects I listed, like Sweetwater, Hustle, and Atlanta. Like when you're looking at those scripts, what do you pull from them, or what do you look for to sort of give you cues as to how to dress them?
So
design for them? Each
of them are different. I'll go through them kind of in the order that I worked on them, so to keep it straight. With Atlanta, I came on to Atlanta season 2, and one of the things that I used as an inspiration in season 2 was my experience as a celebrity wardrobe stylist for music clients. I've worked from everyone from Missy Elliott to Busta Rhymes to 50 Cent to Nas, and so one of the things that I sold Donald on was that although they may not have had a lot of money in the previous season, because Paperboy is now starting to be a bubbling character, music artist. His character on the show is, getting a little bit more notoriety, that brands would start sending him things. And so I use my relationship as a stylist to basically help give me product for the show, and brought in a bunch of brands to help, offset the wardrobe budget by having people actually give us clothes for the show. By the time we got to season 4, on season 1, we were using brands like Adidas and PRPS. By the time we got to season 4, we had Gucci, we had Saint Laurent, we had Loewe, we had every high-end brand basically wanting to participate on the show. And I used my own experience of working on a movie like Without Remorse in Germany, and my experience of like working out the country and being able to shop and see what other people are wearing as my influence of how I evolved the characters. On Hustle, one of the fun things that I loved that the director, Jeremy Zager, allowed me to do was we shot the first half of the movie in COVID. And so, we were all quarantined to a hotel, and, we had a lot of time to like basically flesh out these ideas. And Jeremiah and I spoke about, the character Bo, although he doesn't have any money, when you first see him playing ball, we established him in these like beat up construction boots because, he worked construction, but there's still the influence of the culture of sneakers. And so when he gets to Philly, one of the things that I sold Jeremiah on was there was these really fun Air Force Ones that you can change the patches of all the street ball tournaments and change the patches. And so, I basically sold it to him like, he was like, how would he pay for these? I'm like, he's gambling in the park, even though he's sending this money back to his family. But, this is somebody who, for the first time, he gets to eat all this food in a hotel. He's running up the room service. It's not odd that he would either, gamble for sneakers or put his money towards sneakers or, and so I think I use a lot of sometimes personal references or experiences to help influence a character. On Sweetwater, I use the influence of my grandparents' old photos. When they were taking pictures on the rooftops in the 50s. And, one of the great things that I loved about my director, Martin Gugi, was, I told him, although, again, these people may not have a lot of money, they still take pride in how they look. And I showed him all these references of my grandparents' photos of where it was like every photo, every button is buttoned, every shirt is straight, every tie is perfect. And so I think a lot of times if I can actually go to the director with a reference or an experience, or I can sell them on something, then they get it. I remember on Without Remorse, our producer, Alana Mayo, was like, how would this character afford these Yeezy boots? Michael B. Jordan's character is running around fighting Russians in Yeezy boots. And I'm like, listen, he's young. Like, you're thinking of the resale price. If he's getting them retail, private contractors make lots of money. Michael was like, yeah, let me have the Yeezy boots. So I think, sometimes in story, you just have to make it make sense. And you hope that the person who you're talking to, whether it's your showrunner or your director or the producers, that they can resonate with the story, and hope that, someone who's watching it at home is not saying, that's not realistic, or that's not, you have to be able to explain what the reference is or where the experience comes from.
With something like Sweetwater, one of my questions was going to be, did you go back to the family, or were you able to get to the family and ask them for some insight onto what he sort of dressed like?
So my assistant costume designer, Nicole Suarez, we did an extensive dive into the research of the old photos. The NBA, we were sanctioned by the NBA. We had their blessing. They gave us the old CADs, but we actually went a step further and even researched old photos. Sweetwater's grandson actually is in the movie. He plays his father when he flashes back. And so Martin, he got him inducted into the Hall of Fame. So he had all these references. And then, again, we did a deep dive into what the actual uniforms look like. And so I was so obsessed with the details of the basketball uniforms because, like these were people who were getting, $20 a game. The Harlem Globetrotters were getting $20 a game, where, the people who they were playing against and beating were getting, $100 a game. And so we actually went and found someone who could weave us the material that the actual uniforms in that era were made from. We dyed them, we built them from scratch, we put the belt loops, the correct garnishing on the trims, and everything was pretty much authentic. Every suit, with the exception of a few custom pieces that we did, was actually from that time era. Like the suits were older than half of the people in that movie. So, I think when you're going in and you're like digging into those times, the more authentic it is, the better. I think it also helps the characters connect to who they are in that time period.
So one of the things I'm always interested in is like, how do do you find that once the actors start trying on the clothes and what have you, like how does that influence the design for you when you're working on these projects?
For me, it's always when the actor gets really excited about their clothes. If I put something on someone and they're just kind of like, well, I'm like, take it off. Let's start again. If I feel like if they can feel good about it, 2 of the Harlem Globetrotters in the movie are actual Harlem Globetrotters now. And so I think the fun part was watching them, especially playing the characters that the positions that they play now were originally influenced by. I think watching them get in the uniforms and actually start to do the tricks and watch. And this isn't even when we're rolling. This is at base camp, during a fitting. There's some footage of us like all sitting at base camp when we finally had the uniforms done. And we're like, we need you to try these on. And the way they all just automatically started playing, I think it creates a bond between being able to visually say the words in a table reading and actually being able to connect as character.
Yeah. Well, you talked about weaving the uniforms, like the older uniforms, and like I have an old hockey jersey, and like I feel like the older sports uniforms were much less comfortable because
they were.
Were the actor? Did you make modifications so they would feel better, or do you just like this is the character?
This is the character. So even and I think it was important in terms of movement, right? Like one of the things that we were concerned about was, a lot of these basketball players don't look like basketball players now, and I think if you keep it authentic to the time, if like you said, if it's less easier to move. And I mean, sometimes if it's a high performance film, yes, you have to make adjustments. But because this was such, a biopic period movie of telling this man's story for the first time and really understanding that this is about what he brought to the game of basketball, I think it was important, especially showing, how hard it was to make a 3-point shot. If you have everyone comfortable to where they're just moving in their body language differently and how they move now, it doesn't help sell it. A lot of the stiffness in the playing, and that was, between me and, one of our tech advisors actually talking about that. Like they wouldn't have moved like that then. I think when you keep something authentic, unless there's a high stunt, like if there would have had to been a stunt that needed to be done where we needed it, I would have adjusted it. But he was even happy of the restrictions that it did because it helped them move the way they did in that time period.
Yeah, interesting. So now I'm always interested when I talk to costume designers. Is there a particular era or like I guess design movement for clothing that you really like?
They're all my favorite for different reasons. Like I started in contemporary. I love to be able to do something that I feel like when I look at Ballers, like if I looked at an episode of Ballers now, I'm still excited about the Chanel robe that Ricky Jerret has on. If I watch a movie like Without Remorse, when I sat down to meet with Mike and I had originally worked on another project together, another TV show. The one thing that I sold to him was, in video games, the first thing that guys get excited about is building their character. And so what that looks like. And I think that was the selling point for him, to really focus on, okay, what do I look like when I'm ready to go into war? And so whenever I do high stunt movies, I feel like that's a whole other exciting dynamic. There's a movie that will be coming out probably next year that I did, Shadow Force, with Kerry Washington, where so those specific boots, even though they're designer, the tabby boot is specifically designed with a split toe to give you balance. And so when I'm dealing with movies with high stunts, my influence for Shadow Force is, the first thing I said to my director was, well, how fashionable can we get? Because then I'm mixing fashionable with functional. And so then I factor that in. When I do period, like I said, it's always a beautiful reference for me to go back into my family photos. One of the things I used to love the most was sneaking in a closet and digging through my grandmother's old photos. She's like, put them back. And I'm like, no, I just want to see. So to be able to create things that I can not only do research on, but actually physically see from a legacy of family photos, I think that has a special bond for me to be able to create as well. So I love them all differently. The one thing I'm anticipating to do in the future is I want to dabble in fantasy next.
Oh,
but yeah. But I love everything for a different reason. I think there's a different inspiration.
What is it about fantasy though? Is it because it's can go
You
anywhere?
get to create, you know what I mean? You get to, build wings and, it's fantasy. It's wherever your mind takes you, and it's, no creative ceiling on it. It's like, and I always love when I have these like weird ideas and I go to the directors excited and I'm like, okay, hear me out. And then they're like, I mean, I'm just sold on your excitement. So, if I think fantasy is something that I haven't tapped into yet, that I feel like I can really creatively dig deep and be like, okay, listen to this. What do you think about, a costume where when she moves the wings are, it's and certain fantasy shows that I've seen, I really, enjoy as well.
Now you've got such an interesting career, because it's like you started, dressing celebrities, and then you've moved in, but you also, like, when you look at the films and TV shows, it's things like from P-Valley to Sweetwater to, all over the place in terms of like era and style and everything. Is there a particular look or character that you pulled together that you're really proud of?
I think each of them I'm proud of for different reasons. One of my favorite characters I was able to create was Ricky Jerret, because it was my first time being able to, I remember one time the creator of the show, Stephen Levinson, was like, come here. Like, how much money do we give you? Because, he could be cooking in a Chanel robe. He could be playing basketball in Gucci slides with fur coming out the back. He could be in Loewe. He could wear Gucci. Another character that another experience that I was happy to do is, I've always teetered, ever since being a costume designer, I was still a stylist, and people make you choose, are you a costume designer or a stylist? And I'm like, I'm an errand girl, I'm both. So on P-Valley, one year after I had really been doing a lot of TV and film, I worked with Megan Thee Stallion for the summer.
Mhm.
And when they told me she was coming back to P Valley, it was a great opportunity because, you know, then I get to work with people that I've worked with in a different capacity in a new setting. And so it was really exciting to see her on set, how she's evolved to being on shows, how I evolved to be on shows. And so I think that's great. I'm really excited about, I love what Mike and I did in terms of the culture. Like I said, having him run around and without remorse and Jordans and Yeezys and just showing what the cool aspect of, you know, who we are now, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
you know, Solomons are cool to wear in real life. So if you see them on a show, it's like, okay, that's cool. Whereas when I started with Shooter, you know, you wore Solomons on set to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So I think each show or each project I've worked on, I've been able to find something that I can walk away with, that I've either learned something new or I've been able to create something or get someone to do something different that they've never been able to do before.
So my last question for you, what would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Okay. My agent is going to kill me, but I'm obsessed with rom-coms. Like
Oh yeah.
I'm always like, can I do a rom-com? Like I remember when I came back, Without Remorse was my first big feature. And I came back and I was like, I want to do a rom-com. And he was like, you just did a Tom Clancy movie in Germany. Like, you want to do a rom-com? I'm like, I'm obsessed with rom-coms. I think that's one of the things where it takes me to a place of like, just, you know, being able to, one of my favorite movies is Something New.
Mhm.
And there's a scene in it where they go to an event and he steals the jacket off of a mariachi band in the garden. Well, that was the influence for me on Lakeith Stanfield on Atlanta to, because it was like a nod to like one of the
Mhm.
funniest moods or things in the movie. So, I mean, I really secretly enjoy like a good rom-com.
I'm sure you're gonna get on
I know.
that.
I was like, I want to do a rom-com. He's like, focus, focus. I'm like,
Yeah.
focus. Give me something fun.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you.
Yeah, it was great to meet you.
All
And that's
right.
it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.